more Spider-Mans and Womans and Spider-People, so many! Join us today as we count down the top 10 alternate versions of Spider-Man we want in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 once more with this Part 2. Let's get whipping. Number 10, Spider-Man. Another one of my favorite alternate Spider-Men is Spider-Man. He is a version of Peter Parker who died and basically had his consciousness absorbed by experimental spiders. Kinda like DC's Swamp Thing. The spiders come together to give Peter Parker a form, but in reality there is really no more Peter Parker, or Spider-Man, as he died. These spiders merely think like Parker and have his memories. No longer is there a Spider-Man, and in his place instead there is Spiders-Man. This version of Peter Parker first appeared in Spider-Geddon issue number 3 and hails from the alternate reality of Earth 11580. Number 9, Spider-Carnage. There are a few different versions of Carnage Spider-Man, but the one I generally think of when I hear those names put together is the version from the Spider-Man animated series, Spider-Carnage. Spider-Carnage in the animated series is Peter Parker, who becomes filled with rage and grief after losing both his Uncle Ben and his Aunt May, and being made to doubt if he is the true Peter Parker or he is the clone after Ben Reilly comes into existence. It is these darker emotions that Carnage is attracted to when he enters the world via a portal. As Spider-Carnage, Peter's goal was to destroy the entirety of the multiverse before he was convinced by an alternate Uncle Ben to redeem himself, sacrificing himself when he could not remove the Carnage symbiote and ultimately ended up saving the day. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want perhaps even a part 3, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Takuya Yamashiro, aka Spiderman, or Japanese Spider-Man as he is sometimes known. Though in his home reality of Earth 51778, Yamashiro is simply known as Spider-Man. His origin, backstory, and overall fight against evil forces is quite a bit different than the 616 counterpart of this character. Takuya Yamashiro is a motocross racer who ends up getting the powers of Spider-Man from a dying alien who he stumbles across and who gives him an extract that grants him powers as well as the spider bracelet. This alien is also from Planet Spider, because that's what this universe is like. There's a planet spider, there's aliens, they have spider powers, get over it. He also has a giant mech robot he can pilot known as the Leopardon, and a spaceship called the Marveler, among other forms of transport, weapons, and equipment. Another fun fact about Yamashiro's Spider-Man is that while he has some of the strengths that belong to a spider, such as superhuman strength and his spider sense, he also has some of the spider's weaknesses, like an aversion to cold temperatures. Which is interesting, because you know, Spider-Man in 616 has all of like the pros usually of being a spider, but like never of the cons of spider-like abilities. Number 7, 90s animated series. A version of Spider-Man that many fans grew up with was the 90s animated series version. The 90s animated Spider-Man series ran for 5 seasons. Actually, I think it's the second longest series in comparison to X-Men for Marvel animated series. This is the same universe that Spider-Carnage hails from and eventually saw Spider-Man team up with a ton of alternate reality versions of himself to try and take down Spider-Carnage. The awesome thing about the 90s series is there are lots of alternates within that world itself. Not only do we gain access to the main Spider-Man if we decided to go there, but also all the other Spider-Man alternates that exist in the animated multiverse. Also, the 90s was just a great time for Marvel animated series in general, so of course we want to see the 90s animated Spider-Man. Probably just as much as we're hyped about a series that's going to take us back to the golden days of animated X-Men. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about, X-Men 97. Let's go! Number 6, Scarlet Spider. Kane Parker hasn't been the only one to wear the Scarlet Spider mantle, but he's definitely one of my all-time favorites. Kane Parker was a failed creation of a Peter Parker clone. He was defective and his degradation was so severe that it also seemed to affect his sanity in a way as well. Kane also had a few unique abilities in his early days. His spider sense was kind of also precognitive, allowing him to kind of see into the future, but at the cost of his sanity, making him more and more insane every time he experienced a vision. Yeah, Kane had a lot of problems. I think that's why I like Kane actually, because he had so many flaws but also so many quirks. He also had the Mark of Kane, which allowed him to use the same microscopic hooks that allow Spider-Man to wall crawl to disfigure his victims. He could brand and burn the face or body of his victims with just the touch of his hand, leaving behind what others would refer to as the Mark of Kane. Kane. He's changed a lot since those early days, but I would love to see either a nod to his more modern iteration or even the original 90s version of this character. So moody, so much hair. Number 5. Golden Sponge Cake Spider-Man. Golden Sponge Cake Spider-Man fights basically with Hostess snacks. He comes from the reality of Earth 51914, which is the reality belonging to the Hostess snack ads that you used to see in comics. I love that these ads actually have their own alternate reality and their own alternate versions of heroes, and that even within the multiverse, they have their own world and their own canon. As such, this Spider-Man usually fought against his enemies with snacks, and he usually won. Sadly, he is currently dead in the comics, having been killed by Morlun while he was on his way to a date with his reality's MJ. But hey, that doesn't mean that he needs to be dead in the animated multiverse, right? I guess Morlun was like, I am not feeling those snacks. Hostess snacks do not appease me. I only can eat spider totems. Number 4. Spiderling. Anna May Parker, or Annie Parker, is the daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson Parker from Earth 18119, the Renew Your Vows reality. In this reality, Peter and MJ are still married and have little Annie. We get to see into this reality during the events of God Emperor Doom's Battle World, and in fact it became so popular that even after Battle World was gone and done, the Renew Your Vows series continued on, and Annie also appeared in a follow-up story that continued in the pages of the limited series Spider-Girls. Annie Parker goes by the name Spiderling, and like her father has spider-like powers and abilities. In fact, not just like her father, but also like her mother, because in the Renew Your Vows reality, MJ also becomes a superhero and crime fighter who goes by the name Spinneret, and is also obviously spider-themed. Number 3. Spider-Man 3, aka Andrew Garfield's version of Spider-Man from the Amazing Spider-Man Sony franchise. I know what you're thinking, how is this possible if Andrew's version of Peter is a live-action Spider-Man? How could this happen? Well, I believe that when we begin to crack open the multiverse, anything becomes possible, including this. I would really love to see Andrew Garfield's version of Peter Parker return again if possible when it comes to alternate Spider-Men who are out in the multiverse that I'd enjoy seeing more of on their own adventures. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man ranks high among them. You could call him the Amazing Spider-Man, or you could just call him Spider-Man 3, as he later is referred to. I'm hoping at this point people have seen Spider-Man No Way Home, but even then I tried to be a little bit aloof so that there are no spoilers really. Number 2. Captain Universe. That's right, there is an alternate reality where Spider-Man decided to keep the power of the Enigma Force. While in the main continuity of the comics Earth 616, Peter only temporarily became Captain Universe in the alternate reality of Earth 13, he actually keeps said powers and remains Captain Universe. Of course, he doesn't live forever. Despite how cosmically powerful Peter Parker is here on Earth 13, he still ends up defeated in the fight against the Inheritors. Captain Universe here ended up being overcome by Solus, the Inheritors' leader. While his power remained too great for the rest of the Inheritors to conquer and drain, Solus was more experienced and was able to handle such great power with ease, killing Captain Universe. Of course, in the animated universe, where there don't seem to be any Inheritors yet, he could still be alive and could still be well, if he exists there. Let him exist there, please. Number 1. MCU Miles Morales. One alternate I have been dying to see ever since the MCU started up their own Spider-Man film franchise is that of a live-action Miles Morales. His potential existence has been alluded to a few times in the MCU, but we still haven't managed to meet Miles there yet. If Across the Spider-Verse also wanted and was able to partner with the MCU creative team, perhaps we could see a live-action Miles show up there and potentially even make his way into the MCU canon and narrative. I don't know about you, but I would love a whole MCU franchise to be built all around Miles Morales' Spider-Man, and I think Across the Spider-Verse could be a great place to introduce Miles' live-action MCU counterpart. Also, then we get Miles and Miles. There's gotta be some alternate Miles out in the multiverse, because Miles is also Spider-Man. Who are some of your favorite alternates? Are there any alternates you hope we don't see in Across the Spider-Verse Part 1? Which realities are you most excited to travel to? Are you hoping for some MCU crossover moments like me? Let us know in the comments below. And speaking of comments, it's time to turn to some comments from one of our latest videos, Top 10 Alternate Versions of Spider-Man We Want in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. Sunstar shares, I also have an affection been for the black suit Spider-Woman, Julia Carpenter, one of the earlier alternate versions of Spidey. It would be neat if they used Jennifer Carpenter to play her live action. I know a lot of people love Julia Carpenter, so I think it would be super cool if we got to see another version of Spider-Woman, which is Julia Carpenter. I think Julia Carpenter was also the first, wasn't she the first Spider-Woman? Don't quote me, but pretty sure. Carson Riley comments, I hope we get to see Ben Reilly, Scarlet Spider Mark 1, and Kane Parker, Scarlet Spider Mark 2. I mean, I'm just down for any Scarlet Spiders really, but I would really love to see Kane, obviously. Henry Garner responds, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing Spider-Man 2099 and hopefully Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman in the new film. Hashtag nostalgia. Yeah, I feel that. I hope Spider-Woman shows up at some point, Jessica Drew Spider-Woman, because I love Jessica Drew, so give me Jessica Drew. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host, Amanda McKnight. Till next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.